First thing we are going to do is ignore my messy desk and take a look at the Nobels Sound Studio 1 and compare it against the Rockman X100. Legend has it, I've never actually been able to substantiate this claim, but legend has it that Tom Scholz actually sued the makers of this thing for being such a blatant ripoff of the X100. So I thought it would be interesting to pick one up for myself and see if it's kind of a Blendtec suing Vitamix situation, where, you know, I figure if they went through all the trouble to sue them, then the ripoff product might be just as good, right? Well, let's take a closer look. Now, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're already familiar with the Rockman headphone modules and you know that the construction leaves a little to be desired. I mean, it's all plastic. The faceplate is just kind of sitting there, just sitting in the grooves in the two halves of the enclosure, and none of the jacks are actually fixed to the faceplate. They just kind of are held in place on the circuit board. But the Nobels, on the other hand, the sucker's a chunk. This thing is solid metal. I'm not sure if the jacks are actually affixed to the faceplates in a more durable manner on this one, or if they're still just sitting on the circuit board. But overall, this thing is much more solidly built. Visually, you can see where the Nobels draws cues from the X100. I don't think I could have picked any worse lighting. You've got the head company logos in the bottom center in similar styles, so pretty I wouldn't say blatant, but obviously inspired as far as actual functions and features. Input mode selector, 4 different modes: clean 2, clean 1, distortion, edge, not necessarily in that order, on off switch, 3 setting volume control, which is, if you're using the studio headphones I use, loud, louder, and really louder. The other things, this has a low level output that also doubles as a stereo auxiliary input, so you can actually pass through a signal from like a tape player, it would have been back in the day, and then jam along to your favorite tunes. Front of the Nobels, we've got the same sort of setup. We've got a stereo aux input, instrument input. The volume control on this is actually a slider, which is nice. A little more control. It doesn't have a low level out, but it does have, you can do stereo 1/4 inch out, or the upper jack actually acts as a stereophones jack. And for output effects on the Nobels, you can configure delay and chorus independently on or off, and you've even got adjustment knobs to set the level of the effect. This one has a few more modes. You have normal, which is completely effect free, just a unprocessed guitar signal. You have clean 1, which is kind of the equivalent of clean 2. Oh, that's upside down. Clean 2 on the Rockman, which is just really a treble boost. Clean 2 on the Nobels is the equivalent of clean 1 on the Rockman, which is EQ'd to match the drive channels. Overdrive and distortion, and I might mention this knob is really satisfying to turn because it's really kind of stiff and very robust feeling. Both of these guys have an external gain adjustment, obviously on the back of the Rockman there. And the Nobels has that gain adjustment on the side. It also has a compressor adjustment and an effects loop and a foot switch. The foot switch, which I am not actually going to demo for you because I don't want to have to dig around behind all my other Rockmans and figure out where it went. It switches between the overdrive setting and wherever the knob is. Given the difference in feature configuration, I think one could possibly make the case that the Nobels isn't really that much of a ripoff of the X100 until you look at the power supply jack. I don't think any other product on the face of the earth has used a TRS jack for supplying power, but the Rockman did for some reason, and then maybe they were just really trying to carbon copy this thing because the Nobels used the same jack. I think if I were them and I was trying to avoid making it look like I had just copied the homework, I would have used a more traditional type of adapter, especially because something like that would be a lot more readily available. But I guess on the plus side is the Nobels power adapter. Obviously works in the Nobels, and it also works in the Rockman. So what I'm going to do now is just noodle around on this a little bit. I warn you in advance, my guitar playing will probably be worse than usual because I haven't touched the thing in a hot minute. You may be wondering, how do you turn this thing on? And the answer, I think, is actually much better than the Rockman's front panel switch, because you just plug it in like so, and look at that. You get the same blinky light. Okay, we'll start with the clean 2. We'll just call it clean 2 because that's what the Rockman calls it. It's the basic clean with just treble boost. So here's what that sounds like on the Nobels. Switch to the Rockman. Clean 2. You can tell the Rockman definitely has a lot more presence to the sound. So now we'll compare clean 1 on the Rockman with what they call clean 2 on the Nobels, which is the amp modeled clean channel. I want another chance. Freak. Sheesh. Now we'll try the low gain drive called Edge on Rockman and overdrive on Nobels. You'll notice the output volume on the drive channels on the Nobels is a little lower for some reason. The heavy distortion channel. Seems to have more gain and a little more brightness to it. Not a little, like a lot. So since the Nobels has a little more muffled of a tone to it, I thought I'd see what would happen if we stuff in a little bit of graphic EQ. That annoying buzzing you can hear is coming from this cheap crap power supply, so just ignore that. So I'm gonna go back to the clean tube channel. Screwdriver. No, let's actually do overdrive. A little more volume. Turn the EQ off. Makes a pretty big difference. So that's actually nice that it's pretty flexible like that. And it actually sounds pretty good. One thing I also discovered with the amp modeled clean channel and the adjustable compressor, which I'm not actually going to have to touch because it doesn't appear to work on this one. The compressor doesn't seem to do anything. Without the compressor in the way, you can drive the clean to, is what it says. You can drive that clean channel turn off the chorus so you can get more of an idea. It actually does kind of a nice blues. See if I can not desecrate that journey lick again. Not off to a good start. Yeah, I give up. You can't do that on the Rockman because the compressor is always on and you just get a nasty square wave clip if you try and boost it. On the Nobels, since the compressor isn't actually appearing to do anything and is broken on this module, I can boost that clean channel. One thing to keep in mind that if you do boost the clean channel, and it will take quite a lot of boost actually, but you have to put an attenuator of some kind in the effects loop because the signal path goes in through the whatever mode it's in, through the effects loop and then to the chorus and delay. So if you drive the clean channel really hard, you have to compress the signal again in the loop, otherwise it hits the output stage and gets a really nasty square wave clip and does not sound all that great. So out of the two, which one would I pick as my favorite? I actually really like them both. The Rockman is obviously more of a one-stop shop. Just plug it in and go, and there's not really a whole lot you can do with it, but it just sounds good. The Nobels doesn't sound quite as good out of the box, but obviously you have a lot more options, and that ability to drive that clean channel really opens up a lot of flexibility actually. So I'd say the Nobels is more kind of along the lines of the Rockman sustainer, where like you'll have to have some peripheral stuff plugged into it, but you can get a lot more out of it. Not to mention it's much more sturdier So there you go. I hope that was useful.